And he tells them a story after the meal is underway. He tells them this story. When you go to a dinner, when you go to a wedding feast, don't put yourself in a place of honor. Now that doesn't even make sense. If you're going to go to a wedding feast and there aren't assigned seats, why not take the highest place? Why not sit closest to the host, to the family of these people who are being married? Why not? But Jesus said don't do that, because if you do that, then somebody more distinguished might come, and your host is going to have to say to you, hey, pal, time to move down, because that place is reserved for this person of honor, this distinguished individual. And then, you're going to be embarrassed. You're going to be disgraced. Instead, if you put yourself in the lowest place, the place of least honor at the table, then the host can come to you and say, move on up, come on. You don't belong down here, you belong up closer to me. And then you receive true honor. And then one of these ways in which the good news flips the world and its understanding of itself. He says, anyone who exalts himself or herself will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. Just think for a moment about the number of times the Gospels say things like that. The first shall be last, and the last shall be first. If you would save your life, you will lose it. But if you lose your life for the sake of the good news, you will gain it. If you exalt yourself, you will be humbled, and if you humble yourself, you will be exalted. The gospel changes the world, you see, or changes everything about how we understand the world, because the gospel looks at the world through God's eyes, through the lens that God places in front of us. And things are not what they seem. Things are not the way the world wants them to be when the good news is taken into consideration. The world is different. We are different. And the things that we think important are different. And we separate ourselves in some way from the way that the world thinks. We do not separate ourselves from the world, but we separate ourselves from the way the world thinks. As Paul says, we are transformed by the renewal of our minds. We become different people, and we see the world in different ways. And then he says to the host, when you have a luncheon or a dinner, don't invite your neighbors, your rich neighbors. Don't invite your friends. Don't invite your family, because they're just going to repay you. They're going to reciprocate. You invite them, they're going to invite you, yada, yada, yada. It goes on and on and on. But don't do that, he says. Instead, invite people who are not going to be able to repay you. People who are not going to be able to reciprocate socially. Invite the poor. Invite the crippled. Invite the lame and the blind. And who are these people? They're the people who are on the fringes of the society, you see. In Jesus' day, these are people who will not be able to take care of themselves. Somebody has to take care of them. And if they are blessed enough to have family who will do it, fine. But a lot of these people end up being beggars. A lot of these people end up being a drain on their society. And they're thought of in that way. But they're the ones, Jesus said, that the host should invite. This leader of the Pharisees this person who is himself in a place of honor and prestige and distinguishment in his society. Distinction, rather, pardon me. He is somebody, but he's supposed to invite people who, in the eyes of the culture, are nobodies because they can't repay him. That's the way the gospel is. Again, it's just taking everything and turning it sideways, turning it upside down. The point should not be for this leader of the Pharisees, which makes him a leader of the people. It should not be that he is in this because it's expected of him socially. He should not be having dinners because he wants to get invited to other dinners. He shouldn't be inviting people he calculates can invite him back. He should be thinking about the poor. He should be thinking about issues of justice. He should be thinking about the needy. He should be thinking about the people on the margins of the society. He should be thinking about issues of mercy and kindness and hospitality. And those are the people, those out there on the edges of the darkness, they're the ones he should be inviting. The gospel just turns it all upside down. Now, I thought about, because of this text, I thought about changing our observance of the Lord's Supper from next week to this week. Or simply adding an observance of the Lord's Supper this week. Because in my mind, what this text leads me to think about is communion. If God is the host, not meaning the part that we partake, but if God is the host, the one who invites us, then this becomes the wedding banquet. And Paul will use that language about wedding feasts. And Jesus would use that same image repeatedly about wedding feasts and the vision of God and the fullness of God's time and so on. So I thought about maybe doing communion this Sunday, but that's all right. I didn't do that because we're Baptists and heaven knows we don't change the way we do things if we can help it.